Welcome everybody to day 3 of Joy on Demand, the virtual summit. With me today is Gaia, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce the rest of your name, Gaia. But I am going to let people know a little bit about you and who you are. So from her bio, Gaia leads her clients beyond their negative beliefs to the root of their blocks and limitations so that they can release old hurtful events that are still blocking their path, because she knows that our patterns will repeat until we uncover and replace them. Gaia is into lifelong learning, through which she has obtained a huge toolbox of modalities to put at the service of her clients. From using and teaching healing methods like homeopathy and plant-based nutrition therapy, she became more and more interested in neuroplasticity and neural reconditioning empowerment work. Rewiring the brain to heal and grow has become the center of her work. Now, there's more, folks, on her bio in your dashboard, and I encourage you to read it. But I have a burning question right now, and that is, when did you first get interested in the science of the brain? Because that has been something that has become a fascination for me only recently.
Okay. Actually, I can't put a date on that. It was obviously always there, because when I started my career in the health business, I had to study all this medical stuff, and we talked about the brain. And the funny thing was that at that time, that's over 25 years ago, they told us that the brain does not change. That was still the state of science in that time. Then, I don't know when, some articles started to appear saying, this is wrong. Our brain always changes. Maybe some neurons are not replaced, but we have what's now called neuroplasticity, means the brain adapts to what we do, to what we think. And I found this so fascinating.
It is fascinating. I recently was introduced to the latest studies on ADHD and learned that they can now image the brain and see the differences in the brain of a person who has been diagnosed with ADHD and what we call a normal brain. And as I have studied that more, I'm beginning to think ADHD is a superpower rather than a disability.
Yes.
But that wasn't what we were going to talk about today. So I'm going to lead you back to what we discussed.
Never mind, we can discuss that as well if you prefer.
We may circle back to it.
Yes.
But the brain quite aside, I know many people have issues with their body. Maybe it's that they don't like their body type, or who knows what issues people might have. I'm one of those who is constantly wishing I were more slender. At my age, it's not likely to happen, but who knows? So why is it that we just don't like our bodies?
That circles us right away back to the brain.
Circle back.
Because kind of we have forgotten, first of all, we have forgotten what is really important. We've been conditioned, and this is why I'm talking about the brain. We've been conditioned basically from day one of our life to mainly care about our looks when it comes to our body. We even talk to little girls of 3 or 4 or 5 when we meet them. We don't compliment them on how bright they are or how artistic they are. We tell them how nice they look.
This is true.
You know, we're so focused on looks. And the neuroplasticity means the thoughts you repeatedly think become, like from a small path, they become a wider path, then a street, then a highway. because you're thinking always the same thing. This is what we call conditioning in psychology. So then we have a clear image of how a good body should like, a fit and healthy body. Just had that discussion yesterday with someone. And I said, I do not agree. Fitness and health exists at all sizes. She got a bit angry at me, but I still maintain that. And this body image has changed so much over time. So I don't know if you know the statues of the Venus of Willendorf. They are 25 to 30,000 years old.
Not specifically, but I know where you're going.
And they were goddesses, right? This was the statue of a woman. And if you look at her today, you think she is morbidly obese. Okay? And it was not that the artists at that time could not make slim bodies. It was their ideal in those times. It was the symbol of health. Because if you were fat enough, you could survive cold winters. You could give life and nourish the baby with milk coming from opulent breasts. And those statues are the symbols of opulence, plenitude, and abundance.
And Venus is the goddess of love. So
exactly,
and hand in hand with what men at that time found attractive.
But then when you look at the Roman Venus, that one who lost her arms, nobody cares because the rest is much more important. You already see that the body image has changed a lot. And today, it has gotten even more into the very slim person. And the women's body is not associated anymore with plenitude and abundance, but rather with strength and self-control.
Which is not
That's at least what I hear. No, nothing is a bad thing. The question is how prominent is that feature?
Yeah. Or the question we started out with is, how important is it to you? I mean, so what I'm hearing you say is the shape of your body and how you relate to it is based on specifically how you relate to it. Society has conditioned us to base that on external rather than internal. I don't know the last word of that sentence, but not circumstances, but how you feel about your body inside is based on what you find important. Or should be, but society has made it external and what other people think about it.
Yes, because it goes down to the fact that we learn that at an age where we cannot really reflect on these things. And today I was talking to a client. She has an eating disorder. And we were circling back in her past, and I asked her, I did a special process with her. And I asked her subconscious to find the first moment where she was taught that she should not eat when she's hungry. And she came back to a situation with her mother when she was a young girl. And the mother was fasting. Oh. And the mother was fasting, but she was cooking a soup, and she depicted the whole scene to me. And then the mother said to her that she would not eat that food, and she would have some crackers, and she would have to chew those crackers 50 times. And she could recall the total confusion in her mind, asking herself, why, if she's hungry, why is she not eating? And then I asked her to just say, to look at that scene, to look at her mother in her mind, in her visualization, and just say, I do the same thing like you because I love you. And that opened tears and sadness and recognition. Oh my God, I've learned that.
Right.
So this is why I love this work so much, because when we can release and heal this kind of conditioning, then we can do everything in any field. It can be the body, it can be the profession you have, the amount of money you make, or whatever, you know. It is finding those blockages that's so important. But
Yeah.
I don't know, when I told this story now, what did you feel?
It actually brought it home with the very last sentence you said, because I don't have enough concern over the shape of my body to do anything about it, but I do have money blocks. And I can remember my mother asking me how much I made, which was kind of a rude question now that I think about it. It was none of her business, but I answered her. And at the time I was in mid-level management in a corporate situation. And I answered her honestly, and she got this look of disgust on her face and said, "Your dad and I never made that much money." And I was made to feel shame that I made more money than my parents had.
Yes.
So I'm pretty sure that's where the money blocks came from.
Yes, absolutely.
That, or way earlier when my father went into business for himself and my mother took away my dime allowance because they couldn't afford it. That could have had, it's been repeated.
We call that secret vows.
Yeah.
And family rules. So it's not allowed for you, the negative belief or the limiting belief would be something like, I'm not allowed to be more successful than my parents.
Yeah.
And that's something that keeps you stuck.
And I loved my parents. I had no doubt that they loved me and that they were doing the best they could. But now that they're gone, of course I miss them, but I'm a little unhappy that I can't go to them and say, why did you do this to me?
Yes.
And be able to forgive them for it after I've told them that they did it.
Yes.
I'm not a good person.
I understand it. You are. No, why? Because it's true. And you still can tell them. You can still just imagine them and tell them. And you will feel that it was not because they wanted to harm you. Of course not.
No, they didn't.
Most parents want to do the best they can for their children. There's no doubt about it. Right. These are all unconscious things because they had their conditioning, they had their story, and from there we all act from our story. Yeah. But my question was aiming at something else, because coming back to the topic of our body means that all the feelings you just felt, a bit of sadness, a bit of anger, any emotion, you can only feel it because you have a body.
Oh, well, that's something I never thought about.
I hope so. This is why I'm here.
If I were a disembodied spirit, I couldn't feel it at all.
You can't, exactly. If you don't have a body, you cannot feel anything. You cannot think a single thought, because without a brain, you cannot think. You would be melting back into the immensity of the universe, where we all came from, and go back to. And I like to compare that to a drop in the ocean, Yeah. That drop that emerges in that tiny fraction of a moment that you can see it. It has a container, because when you look into microbiology, it has like a skin around it that's keeping its drop form. Mm-hmm. Okay. And in that short moment, it's an individual. And then it falls back into the ocean. It's not dead. It's just lost its form and melted back into the ocean, That's
actually quite a comfort to me.
Yeah.
So now that we've thoroughly explored why we have issues with our body, what are the consequences? And you touched on one of them with your client who has an eating disorder. What are some others?
they are infinite, because actually the love of the body, I like to use a chakra model, and I don't know if you're familiar with the chakras. We have 7, and the first one is called the root chakra. That, by the way, is the only one we have when we are born. So during the first 2 years of our life, all the topics about deep trust, about safety, all these things, about being dependent from caregivers, etc., are all stored in our first chakra energy, and everything that concerns the body, of course, because when we are born, look at a newborn or a baby that's a few months old, how they play with their fingers, with their feet. They really have to start embodying, you know? So that means that our mental conditioning starts in pre-verbal time. And then it affects everything. It affects the things that you like to eat or don't like to eat. It affects the things you like to play with, your hobbies. It affects the person you choose for marriage. It affects your profession, the amount of money that you make, anything. The body is the basis of it all. And because the body is that vehicle, that container that we have that makes us thrive. And I like to think about it like an entity. The body has a mission, and its mission is to help us, to serve us, right? And imagine that that body is a person, like you are the body, and you have this friend, you know, and you see her, you have this friend and you see her, how she's doing her life. And you try to advise her nicely. And sometimes you see her doing things that are detrimental or even outright dangerous. So you go there and you say, hey, be careful. If you do this, then bad things will happen, etc. And then that person, your friend, that person that is so important to you and you want to serve and help, she looks at you and she goes like, come on, shut up, leave me alone. You know, and you go, ooh. Can you feel it in your body? Yeah. That's what happens when we do not want to listen. We feel, the body feels ugly and not worthy. So the first thing is to start accepting that it's there, that it's this one we've got from whoever, God, the universe, fate, however you want to call it. That's what you've got. That's the only thing you've got. And it's there to serve you every minute. And you may not know this, but the body is, well, you know it, but we are not aware of it. We're constantly changing. From the moment of our conception, the body is constantly changing. Right now that we're talking, for instance, per minute, our body is making 100 million red blood cells per minute. Okay? The red blood cells are what we need to get oxygen, and they live for 90 to 120 days. So 100 million per minute, imagine the amount of red blood cells that we have, right? Yeah. Or the inner lining of your blood vessels, your arteries, they renew every 2 to 3 days. Or your taste buds, they renew every 1 or 2 weeks.
So you literally aren't the person you were 2 months ago.
No, you're not.
In any way, shape, or form.
and you completely change. Your body completely renews in 7 years.
Wow.
Everything.
So, I've got a silly question.
No silly questions. They don't exist.
Why don't scars disappear?
Oh, because so each time when we renew our cells, the DNA that's there is copied.
Oh, okay.
And sometimes the damage is too deep, so it is copied with the damage.
Okay.
This is why some scars do disappear or get lighter with age, and some don't. It's a matter of how big the damage was when you were hurt.
Gotcha. How do we?
And
yeah. Oh, I was going to go to the next question, but you had something more to say.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
So, how do we make friends with our body?
I think by accepting this, what I just said, by looking at that miracle that it is, and by understanding that your body is there to serve you and nothing else. It will never go against you. And if you get one message out of our talk today, that's the most important one. Your body is never against you. It's always working for you. So even when you have symptoms, when you have things you don't like about it, it's the best it can do to hold a balance in everything. And that's called homeostasis. And it's super complicated. I have a picture like showing just a little bit the interactions between the hormonal system and the nervous system. And things that happen in a fraction of a second. For instance, you go outside and you're not dressed accordingly, so you feel cold, right? For you to feel cold already, there have been cells that have been measuring the temperature of the cells of your skin, then send back a message to the brain, which then releases a hormone that goes to your thyroid, which releases a hormone that adds your body temperature. At the same time, your adrenals release cortisol to make you think of putting on a jacket.
It sounds like it would take a lot more time with all these reactions.
Yes.
It's really a split second.
Yes, exactly. And I just named a few, it also, your arteries get tense to increase body temperature and all this. It is so fascinating. When you start looking into this, you cannot not love your body, I think.
It sounds like a Rube Goldberg machine to me. One of those things where you trigger by dropping a golf ball, and pretty soon you've got a domino picture.
Yes, with the difference that it's not all falling down, but actually everything has the only goal to make you thrive.
Okay. So I want to explore that more, and I'm not trying to contradict you in the least bit, but I have lost all the cartilage between my hip bone and the thigh bone connected to the hip bone. Yes. Anyway, so when I'm walking, I sometimes often experience pain. And if I walk a little farther than my body thinks I should, it starts dropping me on that side, so that I have to quickly change my stride, or I'm going to fall down.
Yes.
How is that serving me? Is it telling me don't walk?
Yes, in that moment, yes.
Okay.
So, but this started way back.
Oh, yeah.
You did not wake up one day and that was it. So it started. You thought you did, yeah. There was one moment when you got aware.
So I was helping my husband lay some flooring in our house that we were about to sell. And when I walked down the stairs, I had no pain in my hip whatsoever. I never had. When I walked back up the stairs and got to the top, there it was. It was like the last cell of cartilage was gone.
Yes.
So it was literally that quickly. I know the damage wasn't done that quickly, but that was as quick as I felt the pain.
Yes, I understand. And I would go with you if you were my client. I would go with you very, very deep into this and very, very deep into times before. Because when we look at it holistically, the body is not a machine. So the loss of cartilage has happened before, has happened over a long time. So maybe you didn't have hip pain, but maybe sometimes you had a bit of tension in your back,
Oh, yeah.
or, symptoms that you chose to ignore. And
we call it push through.
Yeah, or exactly, push through, or especially with the hip, we have people start to have a hip which is not straight, and then they go to the doctor, and the doctor tells them, oh, now you have one leg that's shorter than the other one. Let's give you what's that called? What you put in your shoes then?
A lift or an insert.
Yeah. So, but that makes it worse. But because that cements the wrong position. And all these things can have happened years and years and years ago. And you didn't make the connection. You only saw, oh, now I have a pain that's really stopping me. But the messages were there before.
Can you fix that? Can you help people fix that with the modalities that you do, the body-brain connection?
There is a lot of things that we can do. So one thing is that on the emotional side, the hips are the part of the balance in life. So you could ask yourself, at that moment when that pain started, was there something off balance in my life?
Well, yeah,
explore that.
Getting ready to move.
Yes, but maybe there was a part of you that didn't really want to give up that house. Or I don't know, I'm making this up, just for the example.
Yeah.
So this is on the emotional side. Yes, we could explore that. And for the whole emotional side, there is, for instance, one of my favorite methods would be tapping to clear all the story that's behind it. And that has an effect on the pain. Oh. And then I'm not just only a coach. I have 25 years of learning. So I would recommend a certain form that's called modern acupuncture, which I think, unfortunately, it doesn't exist in the US, because I was asked to come over and teach it, but the laws are so terrible that we gave up the idea of doing this. So, but this is one thing, because we have people, I see it more in knees than in hips, because I have seen a lot of people with knee pains, and some of them, they have really strong pains, but when you look at the images, their cartilage is a little bit damaged, but not much. And then you have other people where the doctor says, you don't have any cartilage anymore, and they say, I don't care, I don't have any pain.
I was like that for quite some time.
Yes.
And I attributed it to a nutritional supplement that I was taking that was anti-inflammatory, but that has stopped working. So
yes, because things progress. So it needs more than a supplement when you get to that point to reverse diseases. And it might be that your hip will not reverse completely, but just already stopping this is the first step, that it doesn't get worse.
Yeah.
Then work on the fact to get better, that you can walk more, and you have to learn to accept your limits that you have now, which I know we all have difficulties with that. Just don't want to accept.
I refuse. So
yes, I know we all do. I do too. So
bring this back to generalities, because this summit isn't about me. It's about and your interview is about how we make friends with our body, how our body communicates with us, and how we can hear what it has to say and respond appropriately.
But it was such a beautiful example you just gave, because your body gave you the message And you could hopefully see that there are all the levels, the level of thinking, the level of emotions, the level of feeling. They are all implicated when we want to, when we listen to our body and we want to do something about it.
Mm.
So that is actually how your body communicates with us. It communicates with us through sensations, like when you're hungry, your stomach starts grumbling, or when you've read too much or worked too much on screen, maybe your head aches, and you should stop. It's just telling you, hey, take a break, or you get back pain, shoulder, anything, So that's a message. And as I said, the messages can get worse or more intense, but it's still the same. It's, hey, I'm trying to do something for you, but I need your contribution. So even the worst of worst, which would be a cancer, a tumor, is still the body's intent to keep you alive and in balance. So I would say the best thing is to stop thinking in terms of war, because we have all these words. We're fighting cancer, we're fighting COVID, we're fighting. We try to destroy things. That's not it. We will destroy our bodies when we do that. So it's rather to see, okay, where am I at now? What can I do to improve my situation? How can I collaborate with my body?
So we can reach détente.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to be irreverent or to that.
Oh, it's good.
Sometimes my mind goes off in a crazy direction. What else can we do from our side besides listening to our body?
So I would say there are three main things that in general make it or break it. That's food, movement, and mindfulness, nourishment of the soul. That are the three things.
What was the last one? Say that again.
Mindfulness and nourishment of the soul, which is the same for me.
Oh, okay. Yes, we've had several people touch on mindfulness as we have gone through this summit, and it's been fabulous. We've had a couple of people pop in. Would you be open to having questions from the audience if they have any? Sure,
absolutely.
Laura, you've been quite vocal in the chat. Would you like
even worked.
Would you like me to let me unspotlight you so you can see who's talking and put us on gallery view? There we go. Laura, meet Gaia. Gaia, meet Laura, another of the speakers and one of my anthology contributors.
Oh, good to meet. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
It's Angela hiding behind her picture in the other corner.
Okay.
Another of the speakers. So,
hi, Angela.
So, Laura, what would you like to say to or ask of Gaia?
Oh, I just loved a lot of the things that you said, and I think people forget that our body is never working against us.
Yes.
Especially when it hurts.
Yes.
And it's what I tell people is it's yelling.
Yes.
It whispers and it keeps talking and it keeps saying something. And where it hurts often isn't where the issue is.
Exactly.
And so Cheri, you had just asked, what can we do besides listening? But the thing about listening too is learning the body's language. So that and I'm missing something right now because like I am insect central here. Like everything is biting me.
You must smell very, very good.
I don't really think so, but
Sweet
somebody thinks
blood, we used to say in Germany, sweet blood you have.
that's it. And that's what they told me when I was a kid. And so I have been going from my head. What is this? Why am I so itchy? Why am I getting all these bites? But I forget to just settle down and ask my body what it needs. It might need a different food. It might need less caffeine, because the caffeine sometimes makes the itching worse. And so my body talks one way and I talk another. And I don't always understand my
Yes.
body's language. Sometimes it's pictures. Sometimes you ask a question and it throws you a picture in your head. And that's a better answer than any words. But we get so used to words.
Yes, yes, I totally agree with you. And I love using tapping for this, because I don't know if you're familiar with tapping. When it's done right, it can help you in this interaction with your body by asking those questions and tapping and asking those questions, and then your subconscious will release answers to you. Deep answers. Like I was talking about in the beginning, I don't know if you already were there, with my client with an eating disorder, where we went back to when all this started. I'm not sure if that was the exact moment, but that was a very important moment. And we might find more, And this is what I find so interesting. And we haven't learned, I think we should forgive ourselves also for not listening to the body and not doing what's right, because nobody told us that. Nobody has taught us that. Mm-hmm. Our parents couldn't do it. Our grandparents couldn't do it because they were conditioned even harder than we are. Like, pull yourself together, push through it. You have to do this. How can you complain when you have a family that needs you? All these things,
Yeah, that's really true, and brings up the memory that my father was in construction when I was a toddler, had a load of dirt dumped on him, and it broke his back. And until, so for as long as I can remember, Daddy's back hurt, but he still did heavy, hard labor of one kind or another. And he worked through it because he needed to support his family. Yes, so exactly. So you're right. They didn't know.
But now it's our time to teach the children.
When did this come? Angela.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in because it's we're all the choir here. We're all the choir. And I know that for me, I went to a place called Kripalu in my 30s where I stayed, and it was a wonderful yoga and healing. It was an ashram, but they called it a center in Massachusetts. And I stayed there. I became a yoga teacher. I did all kinds of things. And what I learned was, and I was in my late 30s, that I had not been present in my body. And I could relate to that. I would always escape because my body held a lot of pain inside, and I would escape, and I was a dreamer and into fantasy and books and everything except my body. And I actually had to, deep down with breathing and getting quiet, start to actually feel what was going on in my body. And, the messages that I had as a kid were all about, don't bother, plow through, whatever it is, don't pay any attention to yourself, seen and not heard, you don't matter. All of those messages were internalized. Yeah. Plus, the body is just a vehicle to get us from here to there. It was crazy stuff. But guess what? I don't think a whole lot has changed. I know that the information has changed. But I still see, even in my own family with my own kids, this taking the body for granted, this dismissing the body, and the lack of connecting that the body, mind, and spirit are all one. I still see that today. It's not.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And
And our
go ahead.
And our lifestyle and the outer situations we have created don't make it easier, because I mean, how much time do women, I work mainly with women, how much time do women have to dedicate to work, to career, to like making it all happen, having this constant exhaustion? When should they take time? If we don't make that happen, that women should have more time, and men too, to just have some time of introspection, of quietness, as you said.
Mhm.
This quiet moment when we meet ourselves. Totally, we need that. But we have to teach them. We have to tell them, and we have to teach the children. Maybe we cannot teach our children anymore, but if you have grandchildren, maybe you can start with them. You know?
So
We
my
have to do
grandchildren
it.
are adults.
Yeah. I don't have grandchildren yet.
What has come up for me is, I believe I was specifically conditioned not to think about myself. How many of you as a child heard, "You're not the only pebble on the beach"?
Yes.
You know, just how negating is that to your self-importance?
Absolutely. And I remember my mother, she was such a hard worker, and she had, after the war, you know, they had all these hard times, and she always worked. And that was one of my messages. If you only work hard enough, then you'll make it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And when something would go wrong, or when something, her body would not work as she wanted, she would pest against herself, like, "You're such a stupid whatever," you know, like really foul language at herself. And I heard that from earliest childhood on. My mother managed to work, because they had a hotel, and they had a small hotel, and they had no staff. So she worked with a broken hip.
Oh,
And only 20 years later, a doctor said to her, "When did you break your hip?" It was not completely broken, you know, it was a bit.
mhm.
And she said, "Never." And then he said, "That's impossible, because I can see it on the image." And then she said, "Oh my gosh, I remember one day I was going upstairs to do the rooms of the guests, and then I fell down the whole stairs with my Hoover, you know, Hoover
Vacuum
machine.
cleaner. Mhm.
Vacuum cleaner. And what did she do? She got up and she did the rooms. And that was
Wow.
it. You know, I couldn't do that. I'm not as hard as my mother, that's for sure. You know? And
Well, that's probably a
for
good
many
thing.
years, I was ashamed of that I'm not as hard as my mother. And now I'm happy, you know,
Yeah.
but I
Well,
needed to understand that.
I've told myself I'm lazy my entire life because my parents told me that.
Yeah.
Like, you're the
So-
most unlazy person I know, Cheri.
Everybody says that, but it's hard for me to internalize it because I've been lazy all my life.
So maybe we too, we should have a meeting and do some tapping on that and clear that out.
I am really interested in tapping.
Yes.
You know, we have had such a fun conversation, even though it got a little dark at moments. We're already to the stopping point of this session. But aside from the fact that I will need to get up for a few minutes and walk around, we can continue this conversation if you'd like. However, in the interest of not making the videos too long, I am going to stop the recording.